Hello and welcome to Dakota County Parks Intro to Birding and Beginning Birding Tutorial. Today in our video we're going to be going over some of the tools and resources you can use to get you started with birding or bird watching in your yard, your neighborhood, or at a local park. So we're going to go over tools, tips, and tricks. We're also going to go over some of the things you want to be looking for and how to get started in the wonderful world of birding. So thanks for joining. So while you don't necessarily need any equipment other than yourself to go birding and enjoy watching birds outside, if you get any type of equipment whatsoever, binoculars are probably going to be your most indispensable tool. And the rule of thumb is that you should spend as much money as you are able to get a decent pair of binoculars. You want to invest your money in that because obviously the better quality optics that you have, the better you're going to be able to see the birds out there. With that being said, you can still get a really decent pair of binoculars for under $100. You don't have to spend lots of money on them, but all things considered, spend as much as your budget allows on the best option for binoculars. And binoculars are kind of a personal thing. You do kind of want to test them out and try them out before you do buy them. So I do recommend going out to a shop that sells them to try them out, or try some from your friends and try a couple different pairs before you decide on which one you want. Or find a website that has a really good return policy if you decide they don't feel good in your hands, they don't fit your face very well, that kind of stuff. So a couple things to consider. First off is the size of binoculars that you want, and by size I don't mean the physical size of the binoculars. We're talking about the optic size on there. And so on this pair here, which is kind of a good standard size, it usually tells you right here on the focus dial, and these happen to be an 8 by 42. 8 is the number of times that the image is magnified, and then 42 is the diameter of the exit pupil, or the objective lens out here that talks about how much light gets let in to the binoculars there. So 8 by 42 or 8 by 32 is a good number to start with. Some people go with 10 by 32 or 10 by 42. It magnifies the image a little bit more, but the higher that first number is, the more noticeable any shake or movement is. So if you know that your hands sometimes shake a little bit, and even if they don't normally, they can if you're looking at a bird for a really long time and you're holding that pose, you can start having muscle fatigue. So that higher number does tend to exacerbate the shake a little bit and make it more difficult to see some of the finer details on the birds. So that being said, 8 is a good magnification number to start with, and then 42 is a good one for the objective lens there. So we'll start off with our least expensive pair down here. We're not going to get really into brands or anything like that. There's a lot of big names that are out there. We don't really endorse any one brand over the other. I'm just going to talk about the ones that we have here at the park for our programs, and then 2 of my personal pair that I have for birding as well. But the first pair we've got here ran about $60. They're made by Wingspan, which is a subsidiary of Polaris, who makes telescopes and stuff like that. So a pretty decent optics company. These are 8 by 32s. We got these for our kids program because they're small, they're lightweight. They flex down really close together for if your eyes are really close together, like a lot of kids, since they have a smaller face than adults. So these are really nice. And they're also fairly inexpensive, so that if they do end up getting broken or damaged or something like that, then they're fairly easy to replace. And I have a pair similar to this, similar costs. I just keep in my car for car birding, and so then I've got a pair if I need them, They don't magnify necessarily the greatest, but it's a quick, nice, easy pair to have around. So these work really nice, and the kids seem to like them a lot, and they think they're really cool because they look like grown-up binoculars. So those are good to go. Then we have the pair that we use for our adult birding programs. This is by Vortex, and the nice thing about Vortex binoculars and optics is their return and warranty policy, and they have a lifetime unlimited warranty. So these binoculars could get drop kicked off the rim of the Grand Canyon, or maybe my house catches on fire and it's a total loss, and I find my lens cap in the basement there. You send them the pieces, or you set them on top of your car and drive off because you forgot them on top of your car, because that happens a lot sometimes. But you send them back the pieces and they'll send you a new pair. So it's worth a little bit of extra money to have that backup warranty on that. So this pair is the 8x42s. It's the Diamondback model, and really nice solid binocular, not too heavy. These will run you anywhere from $150 to $250 depending upon if they're on sale or not. So a nice entry-level binocular on that. These do have the nice adjustable eye cups there, and we'll talk about that on some of the other ones there, is for whether you wear glasses or not. If I am wearing glasses like I do, I want the eye cups down flush, because that puts the binoculars at the right distance from my eyes. If I'm not wearing glasses, and I want the eye cups to go up, and then those go flush against my face, and that gives me, again, the right distance from my eyes to be able to focus through the binoculars well. So that's the 8x42s. Then I've got the pair that I have personally, and these are 10x42s, so they're really nice for going out. They help you see a little bit more magnification. However, I'm finding that my hands shake a little bit more now as I get older, and so I'm finding I'm going to have to probably go back down to the 8x42s on that. A couple of accoutrements that I have on mine. Sometimes having a lens cloth on your binoculars is really nice to clean them, and a little plug for getting your duck stamp. A lot of people associate duck stamps with hunting, but they do help purchase land in national wildlife refuges. And if the refuge has a fee for getting into the refuge, the duck stamp gets you in for free. So, little pro tip. Okay. Last pair here is, you may notice, a different style of binoculars. The other ones had a straight barrel, and these have kind of an offset barrel on them. The straight barrels are called roof prisms, and these are poro prisms. It's a older technology, but still really great. The optics are really good in there, and in fact, some of the older poro prisms are better quality than the newer roof prism. So if you've inherited an older pair of binoculars from someone, probably the only drawback to that would be weight. They weigh a little bit more than some of the newer binoculars. But I wanted to show these because it's the other style on that. So if you find a pair like this, poro prisms still work great. These are 12x50s, so they are super magnifying and let in a lot of light. Sometimes people think of these as marine binoculars or astronomy binoculars, which binoculars work great for looking at stars, and I can actually see the moons of Jupiter with these, so they're pretty cool for that too. And the other thing I wanted to show on these is some of them will have the older rubber eye cups, and we talked about having those up or down for glasses or no glasses. That would be no glasses, and then obviously, since I wear glasses, I just keep mine folded down in the down position there. So that's just a quick rundown on some different styles and sizes of binoculars. So again, you want to find a pair that fits you and feels comfortable in your hands. I just like both of these. They don't have a lot of stuff on here, so there's nothing that really interferes with my hands when I grab the binoculars. They're all fairly lightweight, except for my my giant ones here. But you just want to find a pair that feels comfortable for you and adjust to fit your face well on there. One last thing that is kind of a little extra besides the lens cloth and stuff like that I forgot to mention is the strap. Most binoculars come standard with just this regular straight up neck strap. Goes around like so, which if you are just going out for a quick little walk, or these are hanging out in your kitchen or your living room to watch the feeder birds, this is just fine. That's all you need. If you are going to be going out for longer hikes, I do recommend investing in a binocular harness. So you can get them either plain material, or you can get them the stretchy elastic material on there, but it kind of goes on like a pair of suspenders and goes around your neck, and so the weight is now on my shoulders and my back instead of on my neck, and this is a much more comfortable way to spend a morning or an afternoon out birding with this on. It helps suspend the weight of the binoculars and make them a lot more comfortable for you to wear longer. I can put a backpack on over this, and they work really well. Also put a camera on them if you're out taking pictures too. But don't get your binoculars and your cameras mixed up on your harnesses there. So those are some little tips and recommendations for what to look for when you're looking for a pair of binoculars. And then we're going to go outside here in just a sec and talk a little bit about how to focus and set your binoculars up to fit you and your eyes. Now that we're outside, we want to go over a couple of tips and tricks on how to get the most out of your binoculars, whichever pair you have chosen to take along on your birding adventures outside. One of the key things to figure out when you're outside, and it's pretty easy, is always pay attention to where the sun is if you're birding on a sunny day, because you don't accidentally want to be following a bird in flight along and then accidentally run into the sun, because that would be a very unpleasant experience for your eyeballs. And so just always kind of take a quick glance, realize where the sun is in relation to where you are, and keep that in mind when you're out birding. Now we want to talk a little bit about how to fit and dial in your binoculars for yourself individually. Most binoculars have this ability to dial them in for you, and most of us have eyes that have different capabilities of seeing. Like for my glasses prescription, this one, my left eye is way worse than my right eye. And so even though my glasses correct that, I can also account for that with my binoculars. And if you don't wear glasses, your eyes probably have some different vision in each of them. And so your binoculars allow you to dial that in. So we're going to talk about that for a little bit here. But the first thing you want to do is notice that your binoculars flex in the middle like this. And what you want to do is adjust them so that when you're looking through, you see one big open circle like this, or oval. You don't want to be seeing two separate circles. That means your lenses are too far apart or too close together. They're not fitted to your face. So flex those binoculars back and forth until you adjust and those two individual circles become one big one. So that's the first key thing that you want to do with them. The next thing that you need to know about your binoculars, and each pair is different, depends, you just got to figure out how yours work, but they should have a focus dial or a focus knob on the top of the flexing part there, and that's going to focus your binoculars and bring whatever you're looking at into crisp, clear focus. So now to get them fitted for your individual eyes, here are a couple of things to think about when you're doing that. I like to do it on a sign or something that has lettering, because that is really something that I can tell when those letters are in crisp, clean focus. So thankfully at the park here, we've got lots of signs and maps that have letters on them, so you can use that to get your binoculars focused well. So what I'm going to do first off is I'm going to turn and look at the sign here, and I'm just going to use the focus knob to bring it into general focus in the binoculars, the lettering. And then to dial them in specifically for my eyes, I'm gonna first cover up the right objective lens here, and then double check my focus on the letters and make sure that they're still crisp in the left one, the left ocular when I'm looking through. And then I'm gonna switch and do the opposite. And now I'm gonna cover up the left one. I'm keeping both eyes open when I do this and look back at the sign. And now, instead of using the dial, I'm going to actually adjust the right eyepiece turns individually. So while I have them looking at the sign, I'm going to go ahead and turn that right eyepiece until they're dialed in and I can see that lettering really crisp and clear through both barrels of the binoculars. So that's getting them focused for you. And then once you get that dialed in, then depending upon how far the bird is, you can just use that focus knob to focus on that. So now the final thing with your binoculars, and this is something that people who bird for years can often still struggle with, and that is you're out in the field, there's this bird up in the tree, you've been watching it for a while, you're checking out the behavior, you've got the size and shape, the colors, and all that good stuff. Now you want a closer look with your binoculars. And you've been watching this bird, and then what most people do is they glance down, make sure they still have their binoculars, and then they bring them up. And it's like, well, where's the bird? I can't find it. And we play hunt for the bird with your binoculars. So this is one of the best tips that I've heard on how to do this and learn how to do this. Again, you can employ our handy dandy map signs or the top of a tree, but you want to pick out something that's a little high up and is a pretty recognizable object. So it's not going to blend in. It's not just a random branch on a tree that you're not going to know what you're looking at. So the top of a telephone pole, one of the sign posts out here, pick something recognizable out for you to see. And I'm going to start looking at it. I'm going to use the red number 44 on the top of the map here. And I'm just going to look at it without touching my binoculars. And I'm just going to stare at it, stare at it. When I'm teaching kids, I tell them pretend you're Superman or some superhero and you're using your x-ray vision or your laser vision to burn a hole through that spot that you're looking at. And then looking at it, looking at it, looking at it, I'm not going to take my eyes off it. I'm going to keep staring at it. Your binoculars are hanging right around your neck. They're not going anywhere. You can just reach down and grab them and then bring them on up to your eyes, and they should be looking right at that object. Okay? If you do it right. And that's something you can practice over and over and over again until you're consistently bringing those binoculars up to that object that you're looking at. And that'll help you get you right on the bird time after time when you're out in the field. Those are just a couple tips and tricks for using the binoculars. And we'll finish up today with talking about some field guides and some apps that you can use to help identify the birds that you do spot while you're out in the field.
When you do spot a bird and you are trying to identify what species it might be, a few field marks to look out for are, first off, how big is it? What's the general size? Is it small like a sparrow or a chickadee? More medium sized like a robin or a crow? Is it large like a goose? Next, you want to pay attention to colors, the main color or colors that you notice on the bird, and then where those colors are. Is it on the head? Is it on the chest? Is it on the wings, the tail? So those types of color patterns you want to notice. And then some smaller patterns to look for are, does it have a little cap or any stripes up or rings up by the head or eyes? Does it have bars or stripes on its wing? Does the tail have a pattern? So these are all different markings that you want to look for that will help you when you finally open your field guide and try to figure out what bird you're watching.
To get us started with the field guides, we're going to start off with two beginner versions. One of them is for the entire eastern region of the country, which is east of the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. The other one is specific to Minnesota. And the reason we start out with either of these as a good beginner guide is because they're organized by color. And that's often what we see for the first time we notice a bird is what color it is. And so it's a great way for beginners to be able to look up a bird quickly. And these are not exhaustive lists of species. These are just some of the most common birds that you're going to see out and about. But the nice thing about them, again, is it's organized by color. And so you get a chance to see similar colored birds to give you a choice of which one you might have seen to pick. So again, it's the Beginner's Guide to Birds by the Stokes or the Birds of Minnesota by Stan Tequila. Either of them have birds organized by color and have a much less number of birds in it, so it's easier to find some of the more common birds. And then for a more extensive collection of birds, one of my go-to books is the Sibley Guide to Birds. These are all, well, we're not going to have parrots here in Minnesota, but here's an example of some shorebirds. They're all painted by David Sibley, and it's kind of a composite of the typical bird, but it's not a photo. So it's one bird, but it's kind of a melding of the examples of all the birds that you might see in that species. And so this one's really nice in that it has that painting. It's all the birds of North America that are recognized. So you do have a few more to wade through, but it's nice to have around because occasionally things from the West Coast show up here in Minnesota, and can sometimes get very frustrated with just an Eastern region book and not be able to find the bird that you saw in there. So again, that's the Sibley book. It's kind of a favorite among a lot of birders out there. There's also National Geographic. There's Peterson. There's Kaufman. There's a lot of different guides. This is the one that I happen to use. But again, as you can see, this one's a pretty big one. I'm not going to carry this one in my pocket. So they also have a handy pocket version, still kind of a large book, but it has just the eastern birds too. So this one's not going to be as useful if you spot a rarity, but this one is a great one for taking out in the field, whereas this one's a good one for reference at home. So this next field guide is kind of a newer one, and if you prefer photos more over drawings, then this might be a guide that you could look for. It's the Crosley ID Guide, and if we open it on up, the way that he has this set up is he's got kind of a composite image of the bird in its natural habitat, but in a lot of different poses. And the nice thing about this type of field guide is this is often how you're going to see the bird when you're out. You know, chances are it's not going to be sitting there nicely posed in perfect lighting like how they are depicted in a lot of the field guides. So that this is a nice one to have, but obviously this does not fit in your pocket. So if you look at how big my hands are, this is not one that you're going to take out into the field with you, but it's a great reference book to have at home. Another good beginner one, it's geared more towards kids, and again, it is focused on Minnesota birds, is the Wild About Minnesota Birds. This one is organized by habitats, so coniferous forest, deciduous forest, and prairie. It's not the best for identifying them because there's only one or two pictures, but it does have lots of great information about the bird. It's got birding tips. It has figuring out some fun math facts about them and migration patterns, things like that. But it's got a lot of fun history tips and facts and other things to get kids or newbies engaged in with the bird. So this one's kind of a fun one to have on your shelf. Again, not a good field guide for the pocket, but a nice reference book to have at home. So a great app that's free and helps you out. It acts like a field guide, but it helps you out even more because with a field guide, you sort of have to know what family or group to look in. This one, all you have to do is look at some of those general observations to make on your bird that we talked about at the beginning. And so first off, you just pick your location, pick the date you saw the bird. You want to pick the size range, sparrow, robin, crow, or goose, or in between. Mine happened to be sparrow size. It was brown, gray, and let's go with a little black too. And then we go next, and it happened to be feeding on the ground. And it's gonna create this whole list of birds for me to possibly could have been. And there's my bird, and I can click on it. Gives me some more ID tips and sounds, and it's a really great, easy to use app. So that's Merlin. So if you don't want to carry around books in your pocket or worry that they get out of date, you can always go the route of getting an app for your phone. My personal favorite that I use a lot is iBird Pro. And it has a lot of birds in it. That is a drawback to it. It's not just North American. It does have some South American and world birds in there, but you can narrow it down once you have it in there. But the nice thing about this is you go ahead and you tap on it. It's got the drawing. It also has photos, and if you get a good photo, you can submit it to them, and they may or may not throw it in there. So it gives you the chance to see the bird again in a lot of different settings and stuff. It gives you the range maps to use. It also has the sounds that you can play. So if you hear a bird or you can see the bird and you want to know if that's what's calling, it's a great thing for that. So that's iBird Pro. And if you want to participate in a citizen science project after your birding adventure and want to record, or you want to keep a life list and keep track of the birds that you've seen, a great resource for that is eBird, which is again another free app from the Cornell Lab, and it just has you start a checklist. And we're at Lebanon Hills, so I'm going to go that. I enter my time, and I start a new checklist, and I just go down and enter however many birds of each species that I saw. If it's something that's not common for that area or rare, it'll flag you and ask for some more details, but it's usually common birds that you've seen, and then you just review and submit, and then that keeps track of when and where you saw each bird, and also contributes data for ornithologists around the world to use to track bird populations. So it's kind of a cool, fun thing to do.
Hi.
So thanks again for joining us at Dakota County Parks for our intro to birding, and we hope we gave you some helpful tips and tricks to make your next birding adventure, wherever it may be, an exciting and fruitful one. So happy birding!